All right, there we go. We are live. So welcome everyone. Welcome to today's interview. We're going to be talking about weight loss without willpower. I'm your host today, Grayson Carter, founder of Nutritionist Near Me, where we help connect health conscious individuals with local practitioners. And I'm joined today by registered dietitian Katie Gill. How are you doing today, Katie?
I'm doing great. How are you, Grayson?
I'm doing great. So I think this is such a hot topic right now with all the information out there about losing weight. There's a million different strategies. And I think this is really interesting that so many people are relying on willpower to try to lose weight. So I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people today. Before we hop into that, would you mind just giving us a little sense of who you are and what you do in your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Katie. I'm owner of KG Wellness, registered dietitian. I also teach fitness. I'm a health coach. I work with primarily women in their 20s, 30s, looking to really improve their relationship with food, lose weight possibly, but also to just maintain a happy body weight for themselves, where they're not kind of constantly going up and down, fluctuating in weight. So for long-term weight management. And I also work with a lot of plant-based eaters, so vegans, vegetarians, who are also just trying to maybe lose weight, but also improve energy levels.
Awesome. So what do you see as there's more information than ever online these days, and there's more programs than ever. And it just seems like we're bombarded with information about how to lose weight. Why do you think, or what are some of the challenges that you see your clients, like when people are reaching out to you, what do you see some of the challenges that people are having of why they haven't been able to be successful so far, even though we have all this information at our fingertips?
Yeah, you're right. So we have so much information nowadays. And I think one of the biggest things that I noticed right away is knowledge doesn't necessarily translate into practice. And there's, if you were living in a lab and I gave you a meal plan and I was making all of your food for you and measuring all of it out, I think you probably would have an easy time sticking to it. But then you throw in, now that we're getting into summer and into warmer seasons, you throw in, well, we're away for the weekend, we're traveling, or I went out to happy hour with coworkers, or, it's graduation and we were eating out a lot more than we usually do. So the biggest thing is not that people don't know that an apple is a better choice than a donut is, but there's a lot of reasons why either just being around other people who are eating a certain way can change your behavior with eating. What you have access to kind of in the moment can make a big difference. And what's close by to you will make a big difference, if it's within arm's reach. So we can talk kind of more about that. But I think it's that people think they just need to know more and that will change their behavior. But really what I see is it's that you've got to focus on the behavior change first and your environment first, and not rely on education. It's funny, I'm a dietitian. I've put years and years and years of practice into this, but if you put chocolate in front of me, it doesn't matter how much knowledge I have, I'm going to eat the chocolate regardless, and I'm not going to be so focused on portion control with it. So knowledge is really great, but it's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing. So that's why I think, so many people think they just need to know more, but really a lot of times it's that you just need to know how to act differently in the moment. Does that make sense?
Interesting. I think so. I'm sure you can help us clear it up a little bit today.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a number of things there. So the environment, some of the habits that we've developed, how we were raised, just who we're hanging out with. So it sounds like, there's a lot of things that can either just derail us from what we want to do, or just kind of lead us to maybe doing it without thinking about it. Not even being conscious that we're making decisions that may be not in our best interest, or what we would choose if we were consciously aware of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I always say when I first started out as a dietitian, I would have these great sessions with people and we would go over all this knowledge, and I would say all right, so these are your goals till next time, come in and do them. Right. And then 2 weeks later, people would come back and I'd be like, so how did those go? And they're like, well, I didn't do them. And I'd be like, but why? You nodded, you smiled, you said you got it. What happened? And they're like, well, my husband was away this week, so I didn't have time to make what I normally make. And I got a flat tire on my way home, and I came home and there were cupcakes on the counter and I just ate them, so it's a lot more complicated, but it still can be simple. It's not super complicated than just knowledge there.
Got it. So let's talk about how willpower plays into this.
Yeah.
I imagine that most people would want to have the discipline and the resilience to take a plan and be able to, take that knowledge, that information that you're talking about, and put it into practice consistently without wavering. But that's not how things happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like life gets in the way, things happen, situations change.
Yep.
So how does willpower play into trying to stick to a plan like that?
Well, I think, a pretty popular phrase of willpower is like a muscle. So it's something that you can build up over time. But the problem with willpower is if it's low, like you can't go pick up more at the store that day, right? So you also don't tend to know how much willpower you're going to have each day. It can be like a varying thing. So it's great if you've got it, but we don't want that to be the reason why you didn't stick to your diet that day, or why you didn't hit the gym, or any of the reasons that, anything that you're trying to change. So I always say, it's not about setting up the willpower. It's about setting up the environment where the willpower sort of becomes optional for you. Like almost you can tune into it or not. So sorry, can you repeat the specific question there?
Yeah, I was just more curious, how does, it was fairly broad, how does willpower play into, I think people truly want to make good decisions. And if they have a plan, like you said, you sat together in your sessions and they've nodded, they smiled, they're like, yep, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, I didn't do it. So how does willpower play into that?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with how it plays into it is people think when I have enough willpower or enough motivation, I'll make those changes. The reality of that is you might have enough willpower tomorrow, but you also might not have that willpower for another year. So are you willing to wait until you feel like you magically have this more greater amount of willpower than you did yesterday? So I would say let's not wait for the willpower. I think it's kind of this idea that people want the motivation to drive the action, right? They want to have enough motivation to eat healthy. But the reality is the total reverse of that the action will drive the motivation or the willpower. So if you start eating healthier today, you're probably going to have more motivation to keep up with it tomorrow. Does that make sense?
So it's kind of like we put the cart before the horse most of the time. We think we'll wait until we have the willpower, but really we need to do the action, and that's going to drive more of the willpower.
Yes.
Got it. So you mentioned a few minutes ago about decision fatigue, and maybe would you mind elaborating on that? Yeah.
So willpower, there's a few studies where they link willpower to decision fatigue that aren't necessarily about nutrition, but I can kind of tie it in. So the research really shows that the more decisions you make, the less willpower you're going to have as the day goes on. And that's kind of just with anything. So if you think about it from a food-based perspective, most people from a breakfast, lunch, dinner standpoint tend to feel like breakfast is fairly consistent, stable. It's the meal we tend to be the most emotionally unattached to, because we are usually running out the door onto the other thing. But also a lot of times, from a diet-based perspective, people don't feel like they blew it at breakfast. They feel pretty on track and solid. From that decision-based fatigue, you haven't made a ton of decisions at breakfast time, hopefully, right? You're waking up, you're just starting your day. As the day goes on, you make a million decisions, from what you're going to wear to how you're going to get to work to what's on the agenda for the day. So lunchtime, staying on track with your eating might feel a little bit harder than breakfast did. Then who knows what the rest of the afternoon is going to bring you. If you're going to have a hard commute home, if you're trying to exercise, what you're doing with your family after work. So most people tend to have, from a food-based perspective, a harder time of day where to stay on track with their eating. And that's usually later in the day, whether that's mid-afternoon or nighttime. And it's because you've made so many decisions. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I remember, I think where I've seen this show up, and who's probably one of the people that brought it fairly mainstream was Steve Jobs wearing the same thing every single day. I remember hearing that, if you look at his wardrobe, he literally wore exactly the same thing for, I don't know, decades. Mm-hmm. And I remember him saying it's because like, I don't want to waste that decision-making, willpower, that decision-making muscle on what I'm going to wear. I want to put it towards things that are going to make a dent in the universe. And so I can totally see how that would apply to even the small decisions about, what we eat on a regular basis throughout the day. And
you can totally apply that. And so he took the decision making out of that, right? And so from like a food-based perspective, if and most of us know, like, oh yeah, mid-afternoon's my hard time, or at nighttime is my hard time. So if that's like your lowest willpower time of day, then I would say then don't make the decision at that time. Like make the decision in the morning what the mid-afternoon snack is going to be. So, and if you are someone who likes choices, then it's like, okay, I'm going to give myself an option between this snack or this snack. And at 3 o'clock, I can decide if I want this one or this one more. But that's so different than you like waiting until 3 o'clock and opening cabinets in the fridge and being like, what should I eat? And same thing at dinner time, right? Like, or after dinner time. Like, you can't control how many decisions you have to make, unlike you can with like the clothes and stuff, but not the rest of the day. So I would say just don't wait until that low willpower time to try to make the best choice. Set it up at your highest willpower time when you haven't made so many decisions of what you're going to eat later on in the day.
So it sounds like a lot of this is just having like the foresight to know, look, I'm not going to have the same amount of willpower in the afternoon as I do in the morning. So how can I engineer my day or engineer my life so that I don't have to make those decisions when I'm at my weakest or my lowest point?
Absolutely.
So, so if decision fatigue is, or is a consequence of lower willpower, or vice versa, where the more decisions we make, the less willpower we have. Mm-hmm. If we can't rely on that, what should we be relying on? Like knowing what we know about that, how can we use that to our advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really can be used to your advantage. So one of the things, like, I think I talked about it a little bit, is setting up your environment for success. So, and that doesn't just have to be your home, but let's just start with home just to kind of start there. I almost say it's like, if you set up your environment to work for you, you're going to almost eat healthier by accident. So a great example of that is, if you can think to your kitchen currently, when you walk into it, is there a ton of food on the countertop? Are there things kind of all over the place, or is everything put away and in cabinets, right? So it's that same idea, like going back to that example, you come home, you had a flat tire, you had a crappy day, and there's like a fresh plate of cookies sitting on the counter. The chances of you reaching for those are pretty high. But the way that you would set up your environment differently is, I wouldn't say you necessarily have to get rid of the cookies, but put the cookies out of sight. So putting them in a cabinet up on like a higher shelf where it's not your first line of sight when you open the cabinet, and instead having like a healthier alternative right in your first line of sight. You're going to reach for that by accident. Another example is like in your fridge. So I always say, you think of like the traditional fridge, and like the produce drawers are down at the bottom, and that's where most of us keep our produce. And then we've got whatever leftovers from the night before, or from the weekend, or the alcohol, kind of more when you open the fridge in that first line of sight. So I would say like the way to eat healthier by accident to set your environment up for success would be to totally flip-flop that. Take the vegetables out of the produce drawer. Even better if you can like chop them up ahead of time, put them in like a see-through dish, and put those on the first shelf where your eyes tend to gravitate towards the fastest, and then put more of like the alcohol or the unhealthy things down at the bottom of the produce drawer. just by accident, you will reach for those chopped up bell peppers because they're the first thing that you see, even if it's just to snack on them while you're cooking dinner. You know, I do this, and it's so amazing to me how much like I eat more vegetables when I do that versus when I have it kind of the other way around. Again, because there's no thinking required. And if you're hungry, you're going to reach for the thing that's the easiest, like grab and go.
Absolutely. I noticed this with myself over the summer when it's hot here. You know, I'll work out in the afternoon, and when I get home, I want something like cold and refreshing and a little bubbly. And I noticed when we didn't have like sparkling water in the house, I'd reach for a beer because it was the same sort of like sensation.
Same effect, yeah.
And then we'd get sparkling water like LaCroix or you know, Perrier or whatever. And it was easy to choose that and completely forego the beer. It was just like I wanted something cold and refreshing. But the choices that, like, when it actually came down to it, if I hadn't planned ahead, or if it wasn't right there, I was going to make a choice where I was like, you know, not the best decision I could have made. So I can totally see how that makes a huge impact on what we decide to eat.
And going back to like what we said at the beginning, it's not that you don't know that a beer isn't like as healthy as a choice as the seltzer would be. But again, it's just that like in the moment, grab and go, you've got a million other things on your mind and you just reach for what's there. So yeah, just like setting it up differently can make pretty big impact.
Got it. So it sounds like there's a lot of like environmental stuff more so than the decisions that we're making. It's like if we can set up what's around us differently, we don't have to rely on our own like internal motivation to make that happen. Got it. So I think this is just a fascinating like topic, and there's so many different ways we can go with this. Anything else you want to add that you feel like is important for people to, I guess, recognize if they feel like they're struggling with their own willpower to lose weight? You know, what would you tell them?
I would say, you know, really focus on changing your environment. Oh, sorry, cancel that really quick. Sorry about that. So changing your environment is the number one. There's a great book called Slim by Design by Brian Wansink, and you can check that out. He's also got like a free PDF, which kind of is a checklist of your kitchen and how to like set it up for success. And so that's like a really fun resource to just check out. But the two things I would say is one, set up your environment, and two, just try to automate a few more things. So it's still along the line of the decision fatigue, but I would say, you know, like picking out what's your hardest time of day? Where are you most likely to veer off track from healthy eating? Is it breakfast? Probably not. Is it lunch? Maybe. Is it later in the day? And then narrow down your choices. So give yourself no more than 3 choices of what that snack or meal is going to be ahead of time. I had something else I wanted to say about that, and I lost it.
No, I appreciate that. If you think of it, we can circle back to it. As you were thinking, it brought to mind, I believe it was the book, I think it was maybe The Slight Edge. Okay. Don't quote me on that, but I remember them talking about the little decisions, how they add up to big decisions over time. And they kind of told the story of one gentleman that would, kind of like me, would come home and have a beer every day versus the gentleman that would come home and have, you know, water every day. And it didn't look like that big a deal. It was only like 100 calorie difference every day. But over the course of the year, one guy had gained 20 pounds and one guy had, you know, lost 5 pounds, for example. Yep. And so that one beer isn't a big deal on its own, but compounded day after day after day, right, those little decisions can add up to a huge. Every time I see you working.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's okay. I'm sorry. I'm just looking over. Can you repeat that last bit?
Yeah.
I heard you saying no, you know what? I think I know what you're talking about. So what's so interesting about that is most Americans gain 2 to 6 pounds per year. And so, you know, it's interesting because I think if you go to your physical and it's up 2 pounds from last year, that doesn't feel like a huge deal. But if you fast forward 10 years down the road, that's 20 pounds. You know, it could be up to 60 pounds. So that 2 to 6 pound gain is from about overeating like 1 to 200 calories per day that you didn't need. So it's, you know, and I think people think that they have to be really over consuming to see these big changes. But like you said, like 100 calories here or there, it might not show up that week or that month, but down the road, it really does impact like your overall health and fitness. So yeah, absolutely.
So I guess to not scare people, if 100 or 200 calories can make such a dramatic difference and have us gain that weight, that can be kind of scary. But if we look on the flip side of it, is like, oh, if we can just make better decisions on 100 calories to 200 calories a day, with like having that afternoon snack planned out, having the things put away, not on the counter, staring us in the face when we get home. If we can just make those slightly better decisions over time, that's going to add up to quite a bit of weight loss, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah, like you could be setting yourself up to lose 2 to 6 pounds or more per year by making those decisions. And you might be cutting out more than 100 or 200 calories by just not having cookies on the counter or beer on that like line of sight. And it's kind of, I remember what I was going to say before. It's sort of like, also, this isn't a great health example, but it's like thinking about, do you want chocolate ice cream versus vanilla ice cream? Like, that's pretty, like people are usually pretty happy with whatever choice they made between those two. Like they usually know which one they want more, versus like going into an ice cream shop and having like 100 different flavors to pick from. You know, there's like this anxiety of like, oh my God, there's so many. Did I pick the right one? I don't know if I want that one or this one. So that's why I say like, come up with like 2 to 3 snacks ahead of time, because it's a lot easier to stay on track with that when you have 1 to 3 choices versus when you have just like a whole plethora of things. I feel like I've brought up a number of books, but Paradox of Choice was another great one that talked. It was all about that, of how when we're given lots of options, which we think like, oh, that's great, we have so many options, we'll find something we like. We just end up getting overwhelmed and actually making no decision, or being not satisfied with anything because we're like, oh, well, there's so many other things we could have tried. Did I make the right decision? So that's really interesting. So just want to pause for a second on the weight loss without willpower. You mentioned that you're mainly plant-based when we were doing the intro. Can you say, like, how does that play into like how you're working with clients? And does that have any sort of effect on willpower, or like how do you incorporate that into, you know, the work that you're doing with your clients? So, I mean, regardless of if you're plant-based or not, I think it's the same. I think like, you know, from a plant-based perspective, how do I want to answer this? It's like something could be harder in terms of like protein. Like for someone who's plant-based, like they might have to seek out a plant-based protein a little bit like more strategically than animal-based proteins, which tend to be like at all restaurants or at homes, you know. So I think it's still the same idea that you would say like, well, pick 1 or 2 ahead of time that you want for the week ahead, either have them ready in your fridge. Because I think where people are plant-based and it can be like harder to stick to that long-term is if they feel like they never have enough choice like readily at hand for them with that. So I think if you can, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question.
No, I made it pretty convoluted.
No.
But I guess where I'm going with this is, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to make that transition to plant-based, whether it's for health reasons or for environmental reasons, or they watched the latest documentary and they're like, you know what, I'm not okay with what's happening to how we, you know, the state of our agriculture, our livestock, you know, how we treat animals, and I want to go plant-based. And I think there's a lot of people that are good intentioned in doing that, but as soon as they like try it for a couple of days, they are like, it's just such a different experience. Trying to get on a track that they can follow long term. I think there's a lot of people struggling with that. So curious how that plays into what you do.
Totally. And that's that idea. Like, first I would say, like, if you want to make that change, that's awesome, but be realistic and baby step into it. Like, you don't have to go 100% overnight. You can kind of work your way into more plant-based meals. So I'm a big fan of, like, crowd out your plate with more plant-based stuff, and you'll naturally start eating less animal stuff. But again, that could be that idea that, like, if you really want to try to eat a plant-based dinner tonight, don't wait till you walk in the door at 7:00 and you're hungry and you're tired and you're exhausted to say, like, well, how do I do plant-based now? If you can get some tofu or get some veggie burgers or get some tempeh or whatever, cook it ahead of time. Or, the veggie burgers you pop in the microwave or you pop in the stove really quick. You're going to want to have 2 or 3 different types of plant-based proteins on hand to help you eat that way. And if you focus on, like, doing that with 1 meal a day for, like, a couple weeks, then you might be able to step more and more into it. Or, like, another really popular thing, even for meat eaters, is like a meatless Monday, so you just try to make Monday plant-based. And again, if you have that kind of set, then like, that when you go grocery shopping, that you're going to want to plan to have vegetarian options readily available for Monday night dinner.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
I recognize that in my own life. I'm fortunate that my wife is a great cook and, cooks dinner for us every night and always cooks basically 2 meals for us so we can have lunch as leftovers the next day.
Yep.
But if we have, like, an event, like if we're out that night and we don't have leftovers the next day, to me, making those good decisions is much harder. Like, when it's not just in the fridge, I get up from working and I'm like, I need to go grab lunch. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? It becomes much harder. So I'm totally on board with what you're saying about having that planned out ahead of time and just having those good decisions waiting for you, that it's going to make life so much easier, and not rely on that willpower of, like, oh, I have to be good. I have to make the good decisions, right now in the moment.
Like, another option there can be, like, trying some of those like meal delivery kits that also offer more plant-based, options. So it might, like, if you've never really been plant-based, that can be kind of overwhelming. Like, well, I don't even know what that looks like. So maybe take that pressure off of yourself and look for some of those kits. And what's nice about that too, like, if you guys are gone all weekend and that kit's coming on Monday, you already have, like, everything you need without even having to go to the store. So there's lots of options out there, but those are 2 that, could be good to start with.
That's awesome. Well, Katie, I really appreciate you being on here today. I know there's so many people out there that need your help. So if somebody wanted to find out more about what you do or was curious about working with you, what type of people are you able to help the most, and how should they reach out to get in contact with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, anyone looking to go plant-based or someone who's already plant-based but struggling, that's definitely an area of expertise of mine. And the weight management, it doesn't have to be that you're really super unhappy with weight, but if you, like, kind of like we were talking about, if you've noticed just over the years, the weight's kind of, like, been creeping up gradually, and you want to kind of nip that in the bud and change that so it's not on this trajectory upward for the next 10 years, I'm definitely someone to reach out to. And if you struggle with willpower, we can talk about more how to automate even more decisions. I offer a free 45-minute clarity call for anyone who thinks they might be interested or wants to hear a little bit more about my program. You can reach out to me and sign up for a clarity call on my website. So it's just katiegillwellness.com /apply. So just my name, Katie Gill, Gill, then the word wellness.com/apply. And then there's, like, a short little survey for you to fill out to sign up for a call. And, there's an offer at all times of day and on Saturdays as well.
Awesome. Well, Katie, I really appreciate being on here today. I think this is something that is only going to be more and more pertinent as time goes on. So I appreciate you sharing some of this wisdom with us.
Thanks, Grayson. It was really great to talk to you.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is it for today. We'll go ahead and wrap up. Reach out to Katie if you'd like some help. We'll put all the notes in the or put all the links in the show notes, so you can get a hold of her if you would like help losing weight without willpower, going plant-based, or any of that other good stuff that she can help you with. So that's all for now. Thanks again, Katie, for being here.
Thanks, Grayson.
See ya.
Bye.